You see me here almost every day, posting, sharing, creating content you probably recognize me for. You might think you know who I am. And honestly, maybe you do, to a certain extent. But behind every screen, every camera angle, every edited clip, there are parts of me I've never really shown. Not because I was hiding them, just because I didn't think they mattered. Or maybe I thought no one would really care. But recently, I've realized that the moments we feel the most human, the most connected, often come from the things we least expect to share. So, today, I want to tell you about a few things you don't know about me. And not just surface-level stuff. These are real, personal, even a little strange. But they're mine. They make me who I am. And maybe, just maybe, one of them will connect with something in you. So let's start with something unexpected. Something most people would never guess, unless they were really close to me. I'm into lockpicking. I know, right? Sounds sketchy. But stay with me. I'm not talking about breaking into anything or doing anything illegal. It's more of a mental exercise, a challenge, a puzzle for your hands. I got into it a few years ago after watching a documentary about survivalists and escape artists. There was this one segment where a guy picked a handcuff lock in under 3 seconds, blindfolded. It wasn't about escaping the police or anything. It was about mastery, precision, touch, understanding mechanics in a way most of us overlook. That night, I ended up on the internet, browsing beginner lockpick sets. Within days, I had a small kit delivered, along with a couple of practice locks. I remember the first time I picked open a basic transparent padlock. That click, the feeling when the tension wrench finally aligns and the shackle pops open, it was weirdly satisfying. Since then, it's become a quiet little ritual for me. I keep a drawer full of practice locks, old padlocks I've collected from flea markets, tension tools of different sizes, and custom picks. I'll sit down sometimes with a cup of coffee. No music, no distractions, just the tools and my hands, focusing completely on feel, tension, rhythm. It calms me down, focuses me. Some people meditate, some people knit. I pick locks, and no, I've never used it in a real-world scenario outside of opening my own stuck toolbox once. It's not about that. It's about learning to see something most people overlook, the subtle mechanics hidden inside the everyday. But long before I got into content creation, or lockpicking, or social media, I actually had a completely different dream. If you asked my younger self what I wanted to be, I wouldn't have said YouTuber, or influencer, or filmmaker. I would have told you, without hesitation, that I wanted to be a zookeeper. Specifically, someone who worked with elephants. I was obsessed with animals as a kid. I devoured every wildlife documentary on TV. I had notebooks filled with facts about endangered species, migration patterns, elephant social behavior, even sketches of habitats I imagined building one day. I was the kid who begged my parents to take me to animal sanctuaries instead of amusement parks. In college, I actually studied biology. I spent a summer volunteering at a wildlife rescue center, helping to care for injured birds, rescued reptiles, and, yes, once, a very grumpy porcupine. I loved every second of it. The early mornings, the smell of hay and animal feed, the quiet moments where you just sit and observe. There was something so grounding about it. So real. But life, as it tends to do, shifted. I picked up a camera for a project one semester. I started filming animals, telling little stories with narration and music. That eventually turned into short videos, which turned into editing, which turned into posting online. One step at a time, I found myself walking away from conservation and toward storytelling. I don't regret it. Not really. But every now and then, I feel that pull, that quiet voice saying, Remember who you wanted to be. Maybe someday I'll find a way to merge the two, create documentaries, support conservation through storytelling. There's still time. Now, I've done some impulsive things in my life. Some spontaneous decisions that turned out to be wonderful, others, not so much. But the wildest, most unexpected thing I've ever done happened a few winters ago. I was exhausted, burned out from work, content creation, constantly trying to keep up. One night, as I scrolled through my feed, I saw this stunning photo of the northern lights in Iceland. It was unreal, green and violet lights swirling over a snowy landscape. Something inside me just snapped, in the best way. Within an hour, I had booked a last-minute flight to Reykjavik. No itinerary, no hotel, just a backpack, some thermals, my camera, and a journal. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going. I landed early in the morning, the air colder than I had ever felt. Everything was unfamiliar. I rented a tiny car, drove toward the coast, and spent the next 36 hours in what felt like a dream. I stood alone on a black sand beach, steam rising from the nearby cliffs. I bathed in a natural hot spring under falling snow. I drove in silence, watching reindeer cross the roads, eating gas station snacks and listening to Icelandic folk music on the radio. And yes, I saw the northern lights. It was even more breathtaking than I imagined. I stood there in the freezing cold, just staring at the sky like it was speaking to me. No distractions. No thoughts about views or algorithms or uploads. Just me, nature, and this overwhelming sense of awe. When I came back, I didn't post about it right away. It felt too personal, too sacred. But it reminded me that sometimes the best moments in life are the ones you don't plan. The ones where you trust your gut and just go. But for all the adventure and discovery, I also carry fears. Some logical, some less so. One that's haunted me since childhood is my fear of mirrors in the dark. Sounds silly, I know, but hear me out. When I was around 9, I heard a ghost story at a sleepover, something about mirrors being portals, and how, if you stare into one long enough in the dark, you might see something looking back. I laughed at the time, but that night, when I went home, I couldn't bring myself to look at the mirror in my hallway. I started covering mirrors at night, or turning them to the wall. Even now, as an adult, I can feel that tension if I walk into a dark room with a mirror in it. My mind knows better. I know it's just reflective glass. But sometimes, fear doesn't live in the brain. It lives in the body. I've tried to work on it. I've even studied the psychology of fear, why we hold on to irrational phobias, how trauma and suggestion shape the subconscious. I've watched horror movies to desensitize myself, listened to rational podcasts about ghosts and folklore. Still, that unease lingers. It's not paralyzing, but it's real. And I think we all have something like that. A shadow from childhood that never fully leaves. And then there are the regrets, the ones that stay with you, even when time tries to smooth them over. Mine is about my grandfather. He was quiet, stern, but gentle. He didn't say much, but his presence was steady, reliable in a way I didn't fully appreciate when I was younger. He had these hands, rough from decades of work, and a voice that only got loud when he laughed. He told stories from the old days. Some were funny, others made no sense, but they were his. I always thought I'd have time to sit down with him and ask about his life. Really ask. Not just nod while checking my phone or rushing out the door. But one day, time ran out. He passed away quietly, and I realized I never really said what I needed to. I never told him how much I admired him, how much I learned just by watching him. That silence, It stuck with me. And I know I'm not alone in this. So many of us put things off. We assume there'll be another chance, another birthday, another visit. But the truth is, life doesn't always give you notice. That regret changed how I live now. I say, thank you more. I send random messages to people I care about. I try to call instead of text. Because what I learned is simple. If you love someone, let them know. While you can, don't wait for the perfect moment. Just say it. So, yeah, these are parts of me you probably didn't know. Parts that aren't polished or perfect, but they're real. And I think that's what we all want, in the end. Realness. Connection. The feeling that somewhere out there, someone understands. If you've made it this far, thank you. Truly. You've just listened to a big piece of my story. Maybe it surprised you. Maybe it reminded you of something in your own life. Either way, I'm glad you're here. And if you feel brave, I'd love to hear one thing about you that most people don't know. Leave it in the comments. Let's make this space a little more human, together.